Yes, I know your environment. So environmental factors which control these epigenetic factors. So there are things we eat, diet, toxins in the environment, stress, sleep, and things like that. In the case of epigenetics, and when we say epigenetics, that's what we are talking about. So in other words, epigenetics is like you have a book. Let's say you have a book like that, which contains a set of information or the blueprint. And then you want to read it. So the epigenetics is the instructions that shows you how to read this book. The instructions that tells you how to where to pause and when to turn the page and when to laugh. It's like a playbook, a book that is on that gives you instruction. Epigenetics tells you when to move, when to stop, when to activate, when to run. That is what epigenetics is like. All right. So, in other words, the DNA is the fixed code or our genetic code. That's the DNA. And the epigenetics is the flexible switches that turns on and off. So, we all know that the DNA or the genes, they have a certain sequence, what is referred to as bases, A, C, G, T. So these ACGT bases, they are the ones that are connected, they are bonded together to provide the inheritable blueprint that forms the backbone of the genes. Epigenetics marks are chemical tags on the DNA or the protein that is associated with the DNA. And they do not change the sequence. They do not change the ACGT or AC. It doesn't change it. How, when you look at the DNA, the scientifically minded among us, we know that A always bonds with T. A and T always bond together, and then C and G always bond together. Epigenetics doesn't change that. But the tags tell the cells to read. So our genes is like a set of instructions, and our body functions as it reads the instructions. So for example, if I give you a recipe for how to bake bread, the recipe will say, get 1 cup of flour. This is just an example, right? 1 cup of flour, a tablespoon of sugar, 1 tablespoon of olive oil, a little, half a teaspoon of salt, add in some this, add that, add that. Those are the instructions. The epigenetics is the tag that reads. It tells you when to read. Well, it tells you read this gene. So it's going on, you're reading the recipe, and then there's a portion that says add in eggs to the recipe. So add flour, a cup of flour, 1 tablespoon of sugar, half a teaspoon of salt, half 2 teaspoons of olive oil, and then add 2 eggs, add butter or add margarine. So the instructions are there, but let's pretend that the epigenetic principles wants to make bread that is vegan, bread that doesn't have any animal products in there. So then it will tell you, it will instruct the body to go on reading. Okay, flour, 1 cup of flour, check. I want this one. 1 tablespoon of sugar. Okay, I want this. Check. 1 teaspoon of salt. Check. I want it. 2 teaspoons of olive oil. Check. I want it. 2 eggs. No, I don't want this. Don't read it. Skip. And so you skip that. You don't add the eggs, and then he goes on to the next one. One slice of butter or margarine. He said, I don't want this either. Skip. So you skip all those, and then you go to the end where he says, add in 2 cups of water. And then the epigenetics principle will tell you, okay, read this. So epigenetics, what it does is it will read the gene, tell you when to skip, and then continue reading, tell you when to skip, and then continue reading. That is epigenetics. It's beautiful when you understand how this functions. So read this gene or ignore this gene. Now, the beautiful thing about this is that these epigenetic factors or changes are reversible. So let me go back to the recipe, the bread recipe. If somebody that who eats butter and who eats eggs is baking their bread, the epigenetic principle will say, okay, just read it all. Don't skip anything. Add the eggs, add the butter, add the margarine, add it all. It's the same recipe, all right. But for the vegan, you skip the eggs and the butter and the margarine and all. But for somebody who eats everything, you don't skip. That is how epigenetics works. So it can be reversed. It is reversible. And this is why I am spending a lot of time here, because this is basically the crux. This is it. Once you understand this, you understand that you can modify your genes. You can modify how your genes work. But understand that that modification is reversible. So whatever you're doing that is changing your genes, you have to keep doing it in order to get the benefits. Otherwise, if you do it today and then you change and then you go back and do something else tomorrow, you are reversing the benefits of the epigenetic principles that you gain. I don't know whether this makes sense. All right, so basically what happens in the genes, what happens that makes this principle work? There are 2 main types of marks. Well, what is referred to as epigenetic marks, there are 2 main types. The one that says read this and the one that says ignore this. There are 2 main types. Just for the sake of those who are listening to me who are medically inclined. The first one is called what is called DNA methylation, where the body adds a methyl group. There's a structure called a methyl group. It adds it to the DNA. And then when that is done, when it puts the stamp of the methyl on a gene, it silences the gene. So methylation silences the gene. And then there's a second one. There are 2 main types: methylation or DNA methylation, and then the second is called histone modification. What histone modification does is that if you go back here and you look at the DNA, this is a DNA that has been unwound. This is a gene that has been unwound. It's like unraveled. It's like a shoelace that has been released. When you release a shoelace, or this is what you get. But within the cell, the genes are packed very tight. And then there is like a thread or a rope. It's a protein. It's called histone. And the genes coil around it. They are tight around them. That is how genes, so they are packed so tightly so that they will fit within the cell. And histone modification is when that coiling of the gene around that histone is done so tightly. It's packed so tight that it begins to control the gene access. So the gene is not accessible. It doesn't do what it's supposed to do. And that is epigenetics. And so these two processes turns on genes and turns them off. Epigenetics is influenced by environment, as we have already seen. So epigenetics is not set in stone. So our DNA sequence cannot be changed, but epigenetic patterns can change throughout our life. So throughout your life, and this is where I started with, as young people, a lot of the times we think that, oh, I can eat whatever I want. If you're eating poorly today, what you are actually doing is you are creating epigenetic imprints on your DNA, on your cells, that can lead to one action or the other. Even though the epigenetics can change, some of the effects may be long lasting. We'll come back to that later. In the epigenetics, make one semi. And some genes, and so the source and so on, a be a hundred more, a bit the attractable. And as and Susan Swan, epigenetics and Susan Swan, Sakrayan, it misses some. It did be a ne. Said na me de pan o tro no example no na wato pan no akusua wo ma o chena e betimi abasa wo beto pan no akusua nim enti esesa. Now the things that change it are environmental inputs, what we eat, the chemicals in young people, all the chemicals and the cosmetics and everything that we put on our skin, they imprint on our genes. Anything that you put on your skin, one way or the other, has access to your bloodstream. Any toxin or any chemical you put on your skin has access to your bloodstream, especially if it's oil-based. Any chemical that is oily based that you put on your skin, they gain access to your bloodstream. And then when they get there, they can begin epigenetic modifications. Smoking, stress, and other lifestyle factors can add or remove epigenetic tags. And so if you're a young person, don't ever think that you are invincible, that you can do whatever you want. You're not invincible. Epigenetics can actually beat you up and mess up your genes. And that is why there are a lot of diseases that are happening now. Sometimes some people come to my clinic and then they say, I don't understand how I got this, because there is none of these diseases in my family. Nobody in my family ever got this. Yes, it's true. It could be epigenetics. Because you may have a gene that causes a certain disease, but your lifestyle can turn that gene on or it can turn it off. And that is why some people get certain diseases that some people don't get. And then also, interestingly, some of these epigenetic changes, in certain cases, epigenetic marks that we are referring to, can be passed on to the next generation. And this is the key that I want us young people to take. Some of the changes, even though epigenetics generally is reversible, certain epigenetic marks can be passed on to the next generation. So we acquire certain epigenetic marks for so long that now we pass it on to the next generation. And therefore, when it comes to epigenetics factors like diet, we can say that you are what your mother or father ate. You are what your mother ate. We usually say that you are what you eat. But no clear woman say, she say you want say, your mama and our papa a dear no, and no, and a year. Into the woman many papa in Susan's wall so. And at the ones who didn't say see other was Susan's wall bow be one of so as young people, once you understand this, you understand that the choices you make can program your genes. It can program the behavior of your genes for better or for worse. And that is why I want us to understand this. Because when we talk about nutrition and diet for young people, we see it as, oh, they say I should eat well for this, but why? I love my cheese, I love my chicken, so why can't I eat a bucket of chicken? I love my bucket of chicken. And then a lot of us are going into diets which epigenetically speaking are unhealthy and they are detrimental or they are dangerous to our health. And eventually they are going to imprint on our genes and we are going to not only suffer the consequences, but we are going to pass it on to our future children. It's unbelievable. All right, so now this is just the introduction, understanding epigenetics and the influences and what they are. Now let's go into some few so that we will bring this quickly to a close. So let's look at epigenetic changes and chronic disease. The reason why we are looking at this topic today is that most of the chronic diseases today that we can think about, all the chronic diseases, they often involve gene misregulation or misregulated genes by epigenetic factors. So if you look at cancer, for example, it involves gene misregulated by epigenetic silencing. Within our cells, there are certain cells that are referred to as tumor suppressor genes. There are certain genes that suppress tumor, that suppress the development of cancer. They suppress the development of cancer, but epigenetic silencing suppresses those genes through what is called methylation. They methylate. Remember, we talked about two things, right? Methylation and histone modification. So the methylation silences the gene. So if the gene is a bad gene, which will cause a problem, then methylation is good. But if the gene is a good gene that will prevent a problem, then methylation is bad. So they can go both ways. But most of the cancers that we see start because the gene, which is called tumor suppressor gene, or if you like, cancer suppressor gene, is silent. It's switched off by epigenetic silencing. And then metabolic disorders like obesity, type 2 diabetes, they can also come from epigenetic changes associated with metabolism and inflammation pathways. Heart disease, research has shown that there is epigenetic modification within the blood vessels or in the immune cells, and this can promote atherosclerosis, which hardens the blood vessels. Neurodegenerative diseases, all different types of neurological conditions that we are seeing now, cognitive decline, a lot of these Alzheimer's disease and a lot of these memory problems. Research has shown that all of those now, there is links that are being discovered which are linked to epigenetic factors. So cognitive decline and all these, they are epigenetic. So their epigenetics is involved in the modern chronic disease epidemic. And then you say cancer, diabetes, obesity, heart disease, Alzheimer's, epigenetics, your genes be a honor, as I say, a Juma and boy and buying, my epigenetics, edum sargin, and so mana akamwa. And your genes means what? As I said, a kum yaria, cancer. Your gene be a cell cancer, emma cancer in develop. Now epigenetics, no, edumno. It's epigenetics. Once you understand this, you will actually take eating and drinking very, very seriously. Because eating and drinking is not only about the cholesterol in it and all of that. Think of the fact that whatever you put in your mouth will either be positive for you in terms of epigenetics or will be negative for you in terms of epigenetics. It can either turn on a bad gene or it can turn off a good gene. Once you understand eating or nutrition in this way, you will not take nutrition for granted as a young person, because you know that whatever you're putting in your mouth, you're not only affecting the right now, but you're actually affecting your genes. You're fundamentally changing your genes. How your genes work, you're changing it. It's as if you are writing your own destiny. You're writing your own health destiny by what you eat. And that is why I chose for us to look at this topic. Now let's details now. Let's look at the epigenetics and cancer. When gene switches go wrong. So the research has shown that the cancer, generally we talk about cancer as a mutation when the genes, our DNA becomes mutated. Then it goes on to divide and then it becomes cancerous. But now we know that cancer is actually genetics plus epigenetics. It's not only the mutation, but which genes in your body are on, turned on, or which genes are turned off also matter a lot. And the research has shown that tumors often show hypermethylation of tumor suppressor genes. So the gene that is supposed to suppress the cancer, the cells, and prevent it from becoming a cancer, they are suppressed by hypermethylation. And this is an epigenetic principle. So it is silent. It's as if you have a city and you have guards or soldiers that are guarding the city. They have machine guns, and then all of a sudden, somebody comes and he takes the machine guns away from the soldiers and tells them to go home. So now your city is without protection. Any enemy can walk into the city and overrun the city and do whatever they want. That is how research is identifying that a lot of cancers are now, because epigenetics has silenced the protective gene that is called the tumor suppressor gene. That's not the only thing. Another thing too is that when there is a mutation, when the cell mutates or when it changes and it is going to become a cancerous cell, there are other genes in our body that are called that are DNA repair genes. So genes that repair DNA. And then these genes also can trigger faulty cells to commit suicide. It's called apoptosis, when cells commit suicide. So there are cells within the genes that do that. In most cancers, what we are seeing is that one, there is a silencing of the tumor suppressor, the good cell or the good gene, which will prevent the cancer from developing, is silenced. And then second, the other good gene, which will help repair the damaged cell or the damaged DNA, is also silenced. And then the same gene that will also stimulate the cells to commit suicide because they are faulty, the cancer cell, that is also silenced. So you have a triple effect. Tumor suppressor is silent through epigenetics. DNA repair is silenced through epigenetics. And then cancer cell or damaged cell suicide or apoptosis is also silenced through epigenetics. And therefore, the body is without, what do you call it, without defense. And then in addition to that, there is that histone modification, which also packs the tide so tightly that it silences it. Okay, I'm sure everybody is asking, or if you're watching me, you're asking me, so okay, so now we understand all these. What are the causes of these epigenetic factors in cancer? And this is where the rubber hits the road, as the English will say. Aha, and a deno. A day and a cause of side, and a cancer cell, a developer, and Ipebiano, intimi, and kuno on seno. Now, intimi moya hobby. A day and a shesa genes, and also, mass cancer, intimi, a dinkunim. And no, and into the yes, the research is showing that high fat, a diet that is high in fat, a diet that is high in sugar and processed sugar, added sugars, alcohol, tobacco, and drugs, all these things. So high fat, especially fat that is exposed to very high temperatures. So if you like fried chicken, deep fried chicken, you are creating epigenetic tags that can have the potential to suppress the tumor suppressor genes, and that have the potential to suppress the DNA repair genes, and that have the potential to suppress the genes that make cancer cells commit suicide. High fat diet, fat that is boiled or that is heated to a very, very high temperature, like deep frying with oil. When you heat it, you change, it's called denaturation. You change the structure of the fats, and then you create trans fats. And these trans fats, they cause hypermethylation. And these are very, very serious epigenetic tags. Number two, high animal protein consumption. If you eat a lot of animal protein, it could be from eggs, it could be from cheese, it could be from chicken, it could be from beef, goat meat, or no matter which kind. If you are eating a lot of animal protein, especially processed meat, you are exposing yourself to high epigenetic tags that have been shown to cause these three steps: hypermethylation of tumor suppressor genes, hypermethylation of DNA repair genes, and then hypermethylation and histone modification of genes which cause cancer cells or faulty cells to commit suicide. And so, sadly, a lot of us, by what we eat, we are rewriting our DNA, we are rewriting our genes. And it's very scary when you think of it that way. And a lot of you ask young people, that's what we eat. We like to eat pizza at every time, every opportunity we get. And then the cheese, we eat a lot of cheese. If you're eating like that, we are like to eat a lot of fried chicken, deep fried chicken, buckets at a time. If you do that, you are creating epigenetic tags, which will, research has shown, have the potential to create this, to cause cancer. This is one of the reasons why cancer is exploding now. Everywhere you look, left, right, center, little children are getting cancers that were supposed to be for grown-ups. Now there are little children, teenagers, 20-year-olds who are getting colon cancer, and they are getting pancreatic cancer. These diseases, cancers, were meant for 50 years ago, 40 years ago. They were cancers that were only in adults. That's why colonoscopy was previously, it was after 50 years. Now they brought it down to 40, 45 years, 45. and then 40 if you have a family history. Because colon cancer was a disease of the grown-up. But now there are 20-year-olds and teenagers getting colon cancer. Pancreatic cancer, the same thing. Now we have teenagers, we have 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds getting pancreatic cancer, ovarian cancer, breast cancer, all these cancers, prostate cancer, that were for prostate cancer previously was for 65-year-old and 70-year-old men. Now we have 35-year-old men and 40-year-old men getting prostate cancer. It is because of epigenetic tags, epigenetic imprinting of the genes. That is why, even though we are talking to young people, I decided to talk about epigenetics. It is a very, very serious topic, because just think about it. By simply eating the wrong food, you are modifying your DNA function, the way your genes work, in a very fundamental way. And that is very, very serious. Okay? And so that is the genes. So now let's look at the good news now. What is the upside? They have done the research, and the research shows that there are certain foods that can actually turn off these negative epigenetic tags that leads to cancer formation. And those are the cruciferous vegetables. There are a lot of them, but because of time, I just put on these three. There are many, many, many. But basically, they are all from plant food, if you want three of it. Cruciferous vegetables: broccoli, kale, cabbage, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, all of them that can fall under the cruciferous vegetables. The research has shown that these can inhibit histone acetylase, the HDA, an enzyme that cancers use to silence the tumor suppressor genes. Broccoli can inhibit that enzyme. And so what is the result? The result is that if you eat a lot of cruciferous vegetables, you will reactivate your tumor suppressor genes. And then when you reactivate your tumor suppressor gene, guess what? You reactivate also the genes that help cancer cells to commit suicide. And you reactivate also the genes that repair, the DNA repair genes are activated. So cruciferous vegetables are the champions of epigenetics. So you see, epigenetics goes both ways. The high fat, high animal protein, the processed foods, high sugar diet, artificial flavors, artificial sweetness, the dyes, blue, yellow, and all those colors that we eat, those things create negative epigenetic tags that can cause cancer. They create negative epigenetic tags that can prevent cancer cells from being repaired, cancer genes from being repaired, and then they prevent cancer cells from committing suicide. But cruciferous vegetables will also create their own epigenetic tags that can sort of cancel out or neutralize the effect of those things. And that is why when you are a young person, or if you are a young person listening to me today, you have to understand why when we say eat your vegetables, it is not just for the fun of it. Because there's abundant research to show that vegetables have the power to create their own epigenetic tags, which eventually will help our DNAs be healthy and will prevent disease. That is cruciferous vegetables. Green tea. There's a compound in green tea called EGCG, epigallocatechin gallate. And this has been shown to reduce the DNA methylation of tumor suppressor genes. So it turns them back on. So green tea and that extract, the EGCG, can also turn back the tumor suppressor gene. So green tea also creates its own epigenetic tags, cancel out the effect of those things. And so if you are a young person, I'm not saying right now that you all become vegetarians or become vegans. If you can do that, great. That's the best way to go. If you cannot do that, my advice is reduce how much of the fats, especially the animal fats and the processed fats, and how much of the animal protein you consume, and how much of the deep fried animal protein, and how much of the processed animal protein you consume. Reduce this drastically. Increase your consumption of vegetables, especially cruciferous vegetables. Add in some green tea there, and then you will be able to cancel out any negative effect. Number 3, turmeric. There is a compound in turmeric called curcumin. And this one too, the research has shown that it can modulate the histones and then also reverse DNA methylation. What that means is that it activates the cancer, what do you call it? The tumor suppressor genes. And therefore, these are just three examples of how your diet can create epigenetic principles that will help fight cancer. Did you know that as at now, there are no medications, there are no cancer medications that can do this? Now the research is ongoing. They are seriously researching to try and synthesize some pharmaceutical or some medication that can do what broccoli and green tea and turmeric can do. And they are not successful yet. This is the power of nutrition. Let's move on. This is a big lecture, but I'll try and finish it now. So broccoli, it has multiple targets against cancer. What does it do? It prevents DNA damage. It slows cancer spread. It targets the cancer stem cells. And then it boosts the liver detox enzyme that help eliminate carcinogens or cancer-causing chemicals. And the beautiful thing about this is that broccoli secretes, that compound that is found in broccoli is called sulforaphane. And the sulforaphane is formed when you chew the broccoli. So when you're eating broccoli and then it's crunchy, as you bite into it, it triggers a chemical reaction in the cells of the broccoli, and then the sulforaphane compound or chemical is formed. Why is this important? This is important in the sense that it is a very bad idea to cook your broccoli until it is so soft and mushy. It is always advisable to eat your broccoli in a crunchy form, because as you bite into it, that crunchy feeling is what creates that stimulus within the broccoli to produce that compound called sulforaphane. Okay, and so if you don't know how to cook broccoli, learn how to do it. Broccoli is only supposed to be steamed. You just steam it just lightly steamed, so that it will be easily digestible, and at the same time maintain its crunchiness so that you can stimulate, because that crunchiness is a stimulus that triggers the cells of the broccoli to produce that chemical. Because when you bite into it, there are two compounds that come together. They are in their inactive form, but as soon as you bite and it crunches in your mouth, that crunchy feeling activates those two compounds, and then they are combined, and then sulforaphane or that compound is formed. And then it will be able to do all this. So the next time you hear about nutrition and health and nutrition and cancer, don't look at it as, oh, just nutrition. Think of it in terms of epigenetics, and it will make more sense, and you will be more motivated to eat your vegetables, because that is the epigenetic tax that we need to protect us. Let's move on to the next one. Epigenetics and heart disease. The research has shown that atherosclerosis and inflammation is an epigenetic thing. The epigenetic tax from food, once again, from high fat, high animal proteins, they stimulate inflammation through epigenetic principles. There are some genes that stimulate inflammation. And then those same genes suppress our immune system. And that is how atherosclerosis is formed. And the research has shown that there are certain nutrients that can stop that. So the same process, diets that are high in saturated fats, they increase the DNA methylation in the white blood cells. So the white blood cells that are floating through our blood, circulating through our blood, which are supposed to protect us, which are the immune cells, the white blood cells, the neutrophils, the lymphocytes, and all those things. A high fat diet, high cholesterol diet, high animal protein diet, the same things that we saw in the cancer story, those things that cause epigenetic changes in cancer, those same factors cause methylation in the white blood cells. And then when that happens, it shifts the white blood cells from defensive, from immune cells that protect us, and then they become pro-inflammatory. And they promote the formation of plaque and atherosclerosis. That is how epigenetic tags cause atherosclerosis and heart disease. And then also, a research found that mothers with a poor diet during pregnancy, so mothers who eat poorly when they are pregnant, their children inherit epigenetic tags from which promote high blood pressure when they are adulthood. So a lot of kids or a lot of young people will have genetic tags that they inherited from their parents that will predispose them to high blood pressure. And so if you're a young person and you're thinking of your future generation, your future kids, be careful of what you eat. So even if you don't care about your health right now, care enough and eat well so that you don't pass on epigenetic tags for high blood pressure, epigenetic tags for heart disease and atherosclerosis to your children. So what are the nutrients, once again, that can prevent that? Folate and B vitamins. These are required for proper DNA methylation. So proper, DNA methylation can be good, can be bad. It can be good when it suppresses bad genes. And we need folate, which comes from leaves, dark green vegetables, and all the B vitamins which are found from plants, vegetables, whole grains, fruits, nuts, and seeds to produce that. Okay, and the research has shown that if you don't have these, then you have a high homocysteine because your good methylation has been suppressed. And then plant polyphenol, there are certain compounds found in fruits. These can reduce the expression of certain compounds that cause inflammation and that lead to epigenetic pathways involving endothelial function. Endothelia is the blood vessels. Inside the blood vessel, the lining of the blood vessel is what is referred to as endothelia. And if you don't eat well, you don't get polyphenols, then you develop what is called epigenetic tags, which will predispose you to high blood pressure, heart disease, atherosclerosis, and omega-3 fats. These can all influence gene expression. Okay, let's move on quickly. And then the research has shown that plant foods actually affect our heart disease. And they did a research. And the research, they conducted the research, and when they did that, they saw that when patients adopted a plant-based diet combined with exercise, the researchers found a regression of arterial plaques. So the plaques that was in their blood vessels, the body started dissolving the plaque. So the artery, the blood vessels was cleaning up. The body was cleaning it up. Not only that, they saw over 500 changes in the genes. So they saw epigenetic tags in different parts of the gene. Over 500 of those were found. And those were the genes that increase antioxidant enzymes and that decrease genes that drive inflammation. So if you're reducing inflammation, if you are eating well to heal your heart disease, to reduce your diabetes or to reduce your blood pressure, you are actually creating epigenetic tags. The better you eat, the more tags you create. That is why we are talking about this today. All right, now let's go on quickly. We are running out, so I'll rush now from here on. Epigenetics and type 2 diabetes, same thing. Same thing. Epigenetics is responsible for insulin resistance, and then it's responsible for how our cells respond to insulin. So epigenetic tags on our pancreas and on our cells affect how we respond to insulin. Eating too much. Some people like to eat. And if you eat too much, overnutrition creates negative epigenetic tags. Not having any exercise activity, living a sedentary life can also cause epigenetic changes in your muscle, in your liver, in your fat cell, and they will blunt the insulin signaling that will lead to insulin resistance, and that leads to diabetes. One last thing here that I'll look at is that there's also inflammation in the fat cells, and a lot of obese individuals have that inflammation, and that also is driven by epigenetic activation of inflammatory, and that causes insulin resistance. And finally, a lot of children are exposed to environments within the womb of their mothers that predispose them to type 2 diabetes. So babies of mothers with poor diets or of mothers with obesity can have their genes altered through methylation, which affects glucose metabolism and fat storage. And so if you are somebody who cares about your children, or you care about your future children, you have to be very careful what you eat, especially when you're pregnant, because you will create epigenetic tags that will affect your children in future. All right. Sometimes we worry about sugar and we say, oh, but fruits have sugar. They did the research. Berries, when they did the research, they saw that just 2 to 3 servings of berries per week was associated with a 23% lower risk of developing type 2 diabetes. And this is a Harvard study. And this was a study that looked at millions of people covering many years. And then exercise also. People who ate the most anthocyanin-rich foods like the berries, they had a significantly lower insulin resistance, and the effect was as much improvement as 1 hour of exercise. So eating berries, just a small cup of berries, is the equivalent of 1 hour of exercise. And then overweight individuals who ate 2 cups of blueberries daily for 6 weeks, they saw a significant improvement in insulin sensitivity because they created epigenetic tags against insulin resistance. So if you care about your health or you want to prevent your health disease, mind what you eat. Vegetables, fruits, those will create epigenetic tags. Finally, we are going to look at obesity and we'll be done. Obesity the cycle can be broken. Remember earlier on I said you are what your mom ate. Maternal nutrition influences the child's risk of obesity through epigenetics. And there's a very fascinating research that was conducted. They looked at what is called surrogate mom, surrogate study. So a baby who is born to an obese surrogate mother and thin genetic mother. So, you know, in surrogacy, what they do is that a mother who is having difficulty getting pregnant, they take her eggs, they fertilize the egg with the sperm of her husband, and then they cultivate it in a glass or in a test tube, and then they insert that baby in the womb of a different mother. And so the different mother will just now grow the baby It's like an incubator. Incubate the baby for 9 months and then deliver the baby. And they conducted the research because they were trying to understand the effects of epigenetics versus genes. Which one is more powerful? And so this is what they found out. So babies who are born to an obese surrogate mother, so the mother who is incubating, carrying the baby is obese. And then the donor mother, the real mother whose eggs are being implanted, is thin. Those mothers are thin. And then what they realized was that those children had higher obesity risk than the ones that were born to a slim surrogate mother and an obese genetic mom. So what this means is that home environment matters more than the DNA for the child's future weight. This is very fascinating. And the research is saying that the reason behind this is the epigenetic factors. So if the mother is obese, but the egg donor is a thin mother, the environment creates epigenetic tags that will tag the baby, and then the baby will be born and will become obese in the future. And then they did another study to test this further. They look at the same mother. So this is a different mother, different surrogate mother, and a different donor egg. This time they looked at the same mother who was obese before, had her children while she was obese, and then did weight loss surgery, lost approximately 100 pounds or more, and then they became thin. And then after they became thin, they had other children. They looked at that and they compared the children who were born while the mother was obese versus the children who were born after the weight loss surgery or after the mother lost weight. And then they looked at their risk for obesity in the future. And what do you think happened? So here, this is what the research says. So the children who were born after their mother lost 100 pounds, they had 3 times lower risk of severe obesity than their siblings who were born when the mother was overweight. So this is the same mother, same genes. The only thing that was changed, the difference, was the weight or the diet at the time of conception. And this is epigenetics at play. Epigenetic tags can silence a gene or they can activate a gene. So if you're a young person and you're listening to me, don't run away or don't shy from nutrition. It is very, very important that you understand that what you eat matters to some extent more than your genes. All right. So they looked at how to address obesity. So basically, the idea is what? The weight optimization. If you are a mother breastfeeding, so children who are breastfed have lower obesity rate in the future because the breast milk, exclusive breast milk, creates positive epigenetic tags effects on metabolism compared to formula fed or cow milk fed. Because guess what? Cow milk contains things that will create epigenetic tags for a cow, for a cow's baby or a calf. And then human breast milk contains positive epigenetic tags for a human baby. And so breastfed feeding is one of the best things to do. Childhood diet. Let's give our children good vegetables, fruits, because that is what is going to create the epigenetic tags. If you are a young person, now you're listening to me now, it is not too late. Remember, epigenetic tags are reversible. Start eating healthy, eat more plant food, more vegetables, more fruits, and stop all the fries and all the candies and all the ice creams and all the artificial foods and the chips and all the junk food, because you are creating negative epigenetic tags which will come to bite you later in the future. But if you take the steps now, you can reverse them gradually. All right? Okay. Finally, the research has shown that plant-based diet is what causes the positive epigenetic tags. They reverse the epigenetic tags that cause inflammation and all that. They did a research, and the volunteers who consume antioxidant-rich foods, green tea, berries, grapes, pomegranates, cruciferous vegetables like broccoli, cauliflower, cabbage, and all those things, kale, Brussels sprouts, bok choy, and all those leafy greens, nuts, daily. What was the result? This diet significantly altered the expression of 25 genes in the blood cell versus a control diet. So they took people who didn't eat this, they ate their normal diet, and then they took some others and then they gave them this type of diet, plant food. And then they drew their blood, put their blood under research conditions. They studied the genes, and then they saw that with the plant food, 25 genes, positive epigenetic tag genes, had been changed, had been modified in the blood. So these genes were mostly involved, the genes that were changed, in cellular stress defenses. Example, DNA repair enzymes and antioxidant enzymes. These were all upgraded. Finally, brethren, how does food control your genes? These are just an example. Folate, all the greens like spinach, lentils, they act as crucial methyl donors for DNA methylation. Sulforaphane from the cruciferous or broccoli sprouts and all, they inhibit histone turning on protective genes. So they turn on the protective genes. Curcumin from turmeric, they help that and reactivate tumor suppressor genes. Resveratrol from grapes and berries. What they do is a key gene associated with longevity. They activate a longevity gene. If you want to live long, this would activate it. Butyrate, this is from fiber, which is found in plant food, beans, whole grains. What they do is that the byproduct, and they also reduce inflammation by inhibiting histone modification. Brethren, young people, I chose to present this topic on epigenetics. I have not presented this in any congregation. You are the first group that I'm presenting this topic of epigenetics to, because it is crucial that you understand it now, because once you understand it, it will affect the way you look at food, the way you look at drinks, the way you approach health and disease. You will not look at disease or diabetes and high blood pressure and cancer as an adult disease, but you will look at it as a disease that you can cause to yourself, that you can create merely by what you eat, which will in effect change the genes, which will then suppress or activate the genes. And that is why I have chosen to present this. So if you want to gain control over your genes and make your genes work for you, take epigenetics seriously. 3 John 2 says, beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in good health, just as your soul prospers. I'll end here. Thank you for your attention. If there are any questions, I'll take a few.
Thank you, Doctor. Thank you. God is good. Your budget questions will be a question that you can put in the chat, or you can also raise your hand now. Maybe a question back who I say. Okay. Cruciferous vegetables, no, in case we'll be allergic to broccoli, and understand what can they take IUB to me. I supplemented that, you know.
Okay. So cruciferous vegetables, there are many of them. So there's broccoli, there's Brussels sprouts, there's kale, there's bok choy, there's cabbage. Cabbage is a cruciferous vegetable. You have the purple cabbage, you have the regular cabbage. All of those are cruciferous vegetables. And so if you're allergic to broccoli, try the others. Try kale, try Brussels sprouts, try bok choy, try cabbage, and you may be able to use any of them. Any of those will give you sulforaphane. That will do the same thing. But we usually talk about broccoli because broccoli has the biggest concentration of sulforaphane.
Okay. Another question here. The same fruits, you know, the same vegetables, no. Does it have to be organic? And I say these ones here, we almost say GMOs and all those, you know, does that affect the effect? And I say, as long as a year broccoli and them groups, you know, it's okay to consume them.
Okay, very, very good question. As much as possible, if you can afford it, choose organic vegetables. Choose organic vegetables, because the whole principle of epigenetics is an environmental. You can look at epigenetics and as a one big umbrella of environment. And the environment contains what you eat, what you drink, how much exercise you conduct, you do, how much sleep you get, like we talked about yesterday, and how you control your stress. All of those can create epigenetic tags. And within the environment, pesticides are one of the nastiest epigenetic tags that have been associated with cancer. So in trying to get the positive aspect of an epigenetic tag from vegetables, you don't want to get vegetables that is highly sprayed with pesticides. So if you can assure yourself that vegetable is pure, is clean, or you wash it properly with soap and water, and you can clean it all and clean all the pesticides from it, then fine. Then you can use the one that is non-organic. Otherwise, try by all means to get organic, because organic doesn't have this, and therefore you will not sort of cancel out. For example, this is not non-scientific. What I'm going to say is non-scientific, but just for example's sake, let's say that eating organic broccoli, pure broccoli, will give you 100 positive epigenetic tags, and then you go and buy broccoli with pesticides, and that pesticide is going to eat away 50 of the 100. You don't want that. So you want to get the full benefits, and therefore, if you can afford organic, by all means, do that. But if not, then buy whatever you get and make sure it's as clean, in a good condition as possible, and wash it well with soap and water. But there are some vegetables you cannot wash with soap and water because of the nature. And those vegetables which have soft absorptive surfaces that can suck in toxins or pesticides, those, there is no compromise with those. You have to buy them organic.
Okay, thank you. Another question here. What is your take on frozen fruits and vegetables?
Okay. So frozen foods and vegetables, assuming that they are from a very good quality source, they are the next best thing to fresh fruits and vegetables. So if you can get them, because usually what they do is that those companies that freeze fruits and vegetables, they have facilities right there on the farms. They have facilities right there on the farms where they harvest and freeze them. So they harvest. So usually between harvesting and freezing, it doesn't take too long, and therefore that's why you can get frozen vegetables. And then when you defrost them, like broccoli, for example, you leave them there frosted, you can still bite in it and it will still be crunchy. No, that's an example. So yes, frozen is the next best thing. If you can get a fresh one, by all means go for the fresh one. But if you cannot get a fresh one, then a good, healthy frozen one is as good as that.
Okay, yeah, that's it. Questions, neighbor, but it looks like people were very people pay attention to the lesson, and yeah, need to at your home. Obi say, I understand that fasting destroys some organelles through apoptosis. Into person who say, can fasting help turn off these genetic markers? No.
Yes. So yes, so you got it. I'm glad you asked this question. Whoever asked it, it means you were really paying attention. Yes. Remember, there were, especially as far as cancer is concerned, there were 3 factors that negative epigenetic tags affect, which cause cancer to develop. The first one is the suppression of the tumor suppressor gene. We have a gene that suppresses tumors and prevent them from developing. That one is suppressed. The next one is the gene that repairs damaged DNA. The DNA repair gene, that is also suppressed, so DNA cannot be repaired. And then the third gene is the gene that activates the cell to kill dysfunctional or destroyed cells or damaged cells. And that damage or that killing is like it makes them commit suicide. That is what is called apoptosis. So there is a gene for that. And eating well, like eating what we have discussed, especially eating all these plant-based foods, activate those genes. It activates the tumor suppressor gene to make it suppress tumor. It activates the DNA repair genes to make it repair genes. And then it activates the apoptotic gene to make it cause cancer cells to commit suicide. And one other thing to that can do that is fasting. So if you fast, you actually activate that gene that causes cells to cause apoptosis. And so fasting is a way to cleanse the body. That's why when you fast, your mind is clear, your body, you feel that you can communicate with God very well because there is a cleansing going on. And one of those things that happens when you fast, and this is a type of fast that's not, it's usually the type of fast that does that is the type of fast where you fast for at least 12 hours straight. So you fast until you are hungry. You know, for example, if I don't eat, I eat breakfast and then I don't eat lunch, or I don't eat breakfast but I eat dinner. That type of fasting, in some people, is not enough to trigger those apoptotic genes. But for everybody, it doesn't matter who you are. If you fast, let's say 6 p.m. today is Thursday. Thursday, you eat your last meal. The whole of Friday, you don't eat anything. And then you eat your next meal on Saturday morning. Like you fast, that type of fast, long fast. Those types of fasting activate apoptosis. And then it causes cancer cells to die and it causes damaged cells to die. So yes, fasting can also do that.
Okay, thank you. The next question or time in I think it's after this question or you're wrap it up. Or say, does all the fruit and vegetable have the same benefit, or some fruits are more healthier than the others? And then under that, is protein more important than other nutrients, especially for muscle gaining and growth?
Okay, so you see, the beauty of it is that every fruit, all fruits and all vegetables have their own unique benefits. They affect different mechanisms and different principles in the body. Some fruits, like the anthocyanidins, those from berries and from things like grapes, and then any fruit that will give you a red color, like red grapes, all those red. That red color is a compound called anthocyanidins. Those have been shown to affect the other part of epigenetic marker called the histone modification. They prevent the histone modification from going on. So they activate cells. And then vegetables, on the other hand, affect methylation. So fruits and vegetables, they are all good, but they do different things. And that is why it is very, very bad to think that one fruit is better than the other. And so this is all I'm going to eat. And that is why God gave us variety. So you eat a little of this here, you eat a little of that. If you look at the screen from this, what we are looking at, the next, what do you call it? The screensaver that we are using. Yeah, you see different fruits, you see grapes here, you see different vegetables. So our diet should be like a rainbow. Eat everything. Experiment. Eat some fruit. Don't eat only bananas and apples. Learn how to eat different fruits because you get benefits from all of them. In the same way, learn how to eat different vegetables because every vegetable is different. The cruciferous have sulforaphane. The orange and yellow have lycopene and others. So every vegetable has something different. So let's learn how to eat and combine them all, and it will help us. As far as protein is concerned, it is, yes, we need protein to build muscle, but we need to balance our diet because our protein, we actually need, according to the World Health Organizations, we only need about 5 to 10% of our calories must come from protein. So we don't need too much protein. What we have to do is make sure that you're eating well, healthy, balanced diet. Because protein, basically, our body can synthesize all the protein it needs. All it needs is for us to eat food that will give it 8 amino acids. All the other 12 amino acids, our body can make them. We only need 8, which are referred to as the essential amino acids. And you can get some even from fruit, some from vegetables, some from grains, some from nuts, some from seeds. So let's not focus on protein, 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 protein. I have a lecture on protein alone, animal protein, and protein, too much of animal protein can actually cause negative epigenetic tags, and we don't want that. Somebody asked a question here. Let me answer it. I know our time is up, but let me answer it for them. Should I count calories to stay healthy? How do I read food label effectively? About the food label, we will have to have a lecture, separate lecture on that. But counting calories is not good. It is unfortunately, it is a market force. They have created that whole idea to make it sound sexy or to make it sound scientific as if you're doing something special. You don't need to count calories. What you need to do is understand the principles of eating. Make sure that your diet takes care of the 6 main categories of nutrients. Your carbohydrates, which you come from whole, unrefined, unprocessed plant food like grains, red rice, brown rice, not white rice, black rice, those things, legumes, beans, and all the chickpeas and lentils and all that. And then fruits, vegetables, nuts, and seeds. So you get your carbohydrates, you get your fats, healthy fats should come from nuts and things like avocados, olives, extra virgin olive oil that is not deep fried. That will give you your fat. Your protein, yes, you can get protein from fish, chicken, and all those, but you can also get all the protein you need from legumes, chickpeas, lentils, bambara beans, black eyed peas, kidney beans, all the bean family, and then nuts. So you need your protein from those. You need your carbohydrates from whole, unrefined, unprocessed foods. You need your fats from things like avocados and then nuts and all. And then those are the 3 components of what is called the macronutrients. And then you need the micronutrients, minerals like potassium, sodium, calcium, potassium, and all those things. And then you need your vitamins, vitamin A, B, C, D, E, and all those. These are the major food, and then phytonutrients, or the dark different colors of plants. So if you're eating, you think of nutrition in terms of these 6 components. Does it have enough carbohydrates? Does it have enough fat, enough protein, enough vitamins, enough minerals, and enough phytochemicals? If you're getting enough and you're eating and you're filled, that's all you need. You don't need to count calories, because you can count calories and count the wrong type of calories and eat the wrong type of food to get the required calories, but you will eventually be creating negative epigenetic tags.
Okay, thank you so much, doctor. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This is a very beautiful lesson. The fact so the angle the for epigenetics, no, I know so you've stuck to a lot of facts, because mostly nutrition that oh in do I say and from but this one is really, I personally, it spoke to me. Like I am what I am eat, but then not just me, but for my future generation, they are also what I eat. Thank you for putting in that angle for us. Yeah, Beji, a closing prayer no from Pastor was saying, Ben, not just oh yeah, not yet day in
Very well, thank you. For coordinating this, Miss Yamisha, and for all of you joined. As usual, thank you so much for the impactful message. Our God and our King, we thank you so much for tonight and for blessing us, teaching us how we should eat and what we should take into our body. Sometimes, like we hear all the time, no, you need to home, but sometimes I want the discipline, and also sometimes even the money to stay focused instead of buying the junks, because the junks are cheap. And it's already boy na in your jumapa. It means seems like a part of a year for 20 boy. help each one of us on the line. Yes, sir. So if any of us is suffering from any of these epigenetic side effects, of course, so yeah, or we inherited any of these from our parents, our Lord, if it's possible, stop it with us. The healers of our diseases, that your children would remain healthy and be strong enough to proclaim your word. Tonight, we want to commit Dr. again into your care. Continue to bless him and endow him wisdom and strength from above, and the knowledge that he continue to impact onto us. Thank you for everyone who joined tonight. Bless all those who coordinated the backstage and everybody at media. Bless each one of us. So we meet again tomorrow, Lord. Be with us. Give us a sound sleep and protect us and bring us to a new day. In Jesus' name. Amen.